Hey, this is Chuck, and you are listening to Fans with Bands, the podcast where we talk to the fans and the bands they dig about life, music, and whatever the hell else we want to talk about. Today on Fans with Bands, we're talking to Dude. Check it out. Hey, this is Chuck with Fans with Bands, and I'm talking to Tony from Dude. Tony, how you doing, man?
Hey, Chuck. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being on, man. So,
Right on.
I think the first time I saw you, I'm trying to remember, was maybe 2014, 2015 when the Mugs played the Detroit Fall Beer Festival. And I was like, what is this music? And then I was like, holy shit, you know? So I became a fan of the Mugs first, which you're in as well. And then I saw that you had started Dude, which I think started around 2012, right? Is that when Kid Gloves came
Well,
out?
yeah, my first album came out in 2012. I've been a songwriter since I could put two chords together. And so it was a collection of some songs that I'd written in 2003, in 1996. It was just a hodgepodge. And I never thought I'd put together a live album, or a live band rather.
Yeah.
And that was just a one-off project. And my friend Bobby Emmett, he used to be in the Sights, and now he's gone on to greener pastures and Sturgill Simpson. The kid just won a Grammy in
That's awesome.
2017.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I've been really blessed to work with some really fantastic, talented people in Metro Detroit. So in 2015, the Mugs were going on tour for our Straight Up Boogaloo tour in Europe. And before we left, my good friend Steven Garcia, who actually went to my high school, Notre Dame High School, he was mentioning Kid Gloves, the first Dude album, and he's like, you know, to know Steven, he's like, he's a psycho genius, and he's like, I don't get you, Tony. You write this fantastic album, and you don't bother to put a band together and, you know, tour or anything.
Right.
And, you know, that was him calling me out a little bit. And so I said, hey, when I get back from Europe, why don't you be my rhythm guitar player?
Yeah.
And let's do this. And so he agreed to it. And then we've been putting the pieces together ever since.
Awesome.
And then, yeah. And so now I have a love for, you know, performing live with my own band. You know,
Yeah.
I'm the singer and songwriter for Dude. And, you know, we've gone through many incarnations of Dude. Steven's the only one that's stuck around with me. Now I think we're at, he says we're Dude 6.0, but this is the definitive version. I have some really super talented players, and I'm just, I always joke around, I'm the least talented in my own band. So, you know, we got Allison on keys, Steven Garcia on rhythm guitar and lead, doing backups.
Yeah.
Michael Latcha from the Beggars, he's doing lead guitar, and Eric Rosen on drums. And
Nice.
This kid is insane. I just said, be my Keith Moon, whatever that means to you. And he's interpreted my songs with energy and ferocity. And so I'm really happy.
That's fantastic. Was that incarnation of the band playing? Because I saw you guys last summer in South
That
Lyon.
was without Allison. Yeah,
okay.
Without Allison. We added Allison. At one point, I wanted, because there's so many guitar harmonies and harmonies in my head. There was an incarnation where I had two lead guitar players and Steven as rhythm, and but you know, I've been sitting on my new album, or our new album, Autobiograffitti, for the last. It's been done since 2020, March of 2020.
Oh wow!
And but there's a lot of piano and synth parts in it, because, you know, why not? I always approach music what would Jimi Hendrix do? Jimi Hendrix was an awesome live performance, but he always dressed it up like with all the psychedelia and all the extra parts he could on wax in the studio.
Yeah.
So I took a page out of his playbook, and in doing so, I just figured, Allison is a wonderful jazz pianist, and she knew Mike Latcha. So it was just easy for her to join the band, because Mike vouched for me and said, this is a band you want to be in. So
Awesome.
now I have the best of both worlds. I have, a lead guitar player and a synth piano, and she could do everything. She
Right.
can lead sing, she can do backups. So, and the coolest thing is if all of us dudes can't make it, we can still exist as a four piece. So if Steven can't make it, we can, Allison, or if
Right.
Allison can't make it, we can do the four piece with Steven. So it's beautiful. I just want to keep on playing until we release this album, just so we're reading each other's minds, and we're the tightest band we can be.
That's fantastic. So I did see I think it was Blue Canary was like the very first song off of Autobiographitti, and then you teased about like right before our interview that there's a book coming out. So what's the idea behind? I'm assuming it's autobiographical, but is it like stories
Yeah,
of the band, stories of you?
it's an autobiography. Um,
Awesome.
and we were talking before we went live. Um, there's many layers to the onion that is my life, and I've lived an extraordinary life. And I've been thinking about writing this book since 2005. I had my stroke on September 4th, 2001. I really got my ass kicked, and I was lucky I survived it.
Yeah.
The doctors thought I was a goner, and they told my family as much. But I survived, and always the overachiever that I am. I try to do it with grace and humility, and so the story begins with in 2016, due to just towards Spain in November of 2016. And I came home, and I was going out for my birthday to Bumble's bar, and I was meeting a dear friend of mine, Jamie, from he played with the Burrs, but now he's in the Loggerheads,
Yep.
and he just keeps on. He's a fantastic bass player. So we were talking, and we were just talking about life, and I was saying, gee, wouldn't it be great to be signed to Third Man, because he worked at Third Man at the time.
Cool.
And he said, well, it's all well and good. And then we got into like, somehow the conversation spiraled into, I've been trying to write this book.
Yeah.
And he said, well, actually, that's a better in for you to, because Third Man publishes books. And so that was really the impetus for, and the catalyst that made me get off my butt finally and really seriously, take a stab at this. So I would, just every Tuesday for the next 2 years, I would write, and I would go to different, bars in Hamtramck, or Cafe 1923, or Kaja Cafe,
Yeah.
anywhere that I could glean some inspiration. And I would sit down for 3 to 4 hours, and I would write. And then I would treat myself to a libation afterwards.
Awesome.
Sometimes during the writing session.
Yeah, why not?
And I was saying, boy, was I cocky, because I figured I could do this in a year. And
Yeah.
I didn't even get a feel for my voice, how I would craft this until 6 months later. And then I started, being empowered. And I love Kurt Vonnegut, and I love Stephen King. I love the self-deprecating prick that Kurt Vonnegut can be, and it's his world. You're just living in it.
Right.
And I love the descriptiveness of Stephen King and his imagination as well.
Yeah.
So I try to, always wear my heroes on my sleeve, and I just tried to write a good story in my own voice, and I think I found that voice. And
Awesome.
it's kind of like, in the prologue, I describe it as, I almost ask the reader, I implore the reader to how I want you to read it. And the best analogy I can come up with is, if, I'm in a bar and you walk up and sit down right next to me, we strike up a friendly conversation. We don't know each other, but through the course of the night, you're going to get to know me a little bit better. And
Awesome.
it's very candid, and sometimes I'm speaking directly to you, and I use italics for phrases, pop culture references, And so I ask you, the reader, to look it up online, everything I've italicized, or I actually, during the time of COVID, I got ambitious and I decided to write a glossary. And who
Oh
does that,
man.
right?
Right.
So the glossary is almost as long as the book, and it's comprehensive. And
Wow.
I just decided to do it because I want the reader to know what inspires me and who I
Yeah.
am,
Yeah, that's great.
um, as an as a first time author.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, have you written before? Like, I mean, obviously you haven't written a book before, but have you done writing, like other types of writing?
No, I've written bad poems, and in my earlier years, I thought I could be Jim Morrison, or something.
Right.
In lyrics, I love
Yeah.
the challenge of writing good lyrics, but I just, to know me, I just throw myself at it, and it usually works out. I always say it's much more interesting to go down with the ship, than to not board it at all. So, um, this one's for me. I'm, obviously, I hope it's successful.
Right.
Um, but I have to write my story, and I think, as long as I'm not embarrassing myself, and uh, I've actually, during the time of COVID, I printed out 5 copies, and I gave one to Danny Muggs because he's saved my life for many reasons, and you'll read about this in the book. But I wanted him to have it because it's we're brothers, right?
Yeah.
And then I started, whoever was interested, I would say, this is my first draft. Don't nail me to the cross, because I've made, slight, corrections, punctuation, and
Right.
run-on senses, and now, like, it's to the point where it's perfect. But 2 years ago, I just wanted to get it out there and to see, to gauge the temperature. Is this good? Is this engaging? And everyone besides a couple family members have really really liked it. So
Awesome.
yeah, I'm onto something.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what yet, but we'll see if I get published.
Yeah.
um, I want to, I keep on saying third man, but there are no guarantees.
Right.
So
Right.
we'll see what's right for me, and if not third man, I have a laundry list of publishers that I think might be interested.
Yeah, for sure. And then, so you're gonna dovetail this in with the album that you're working, correct? Because they're
Hmm.
gonna have the same title. And so is the source material for the album, the songs, going to be autobiographical in nature as well? They tie
Yeah,
into certain chapters or anything like that?
not necessarily, but I love, when I write a song. Sometimes it's just fictional, and
Yep.
but most of the time it's autobiographical. So it's not, you know, it's not tied into like the book itself, insofar as, stories, chapters relating,
Yeah. Yeah.
songs relating to chapters, but
Right.
it is autobiographical.
Awesome.
It's my love, you know uh, for instance, I have a song called Big Star, that is an homage to the band Big Star. And
Oh,
if you
cool.
this is how much I like Big Star.
Oh,
This is
yeah.
Big Star tattoo.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And there's a there's a song called "Ah Geez Louise," a true story, where I was at a bar on the east side called Brownies on the lake,
Uh-huh.
and I was seeing my good friend Jody Raffoul. He's a fantastic, for anyone who wants to see one of the best cover bands in America, and we have him in Metro Detroit. His name is Jody Raffoul. It's the Jody Raffoul band. Look him up.
Okay.
So I was seeing Jody, and um, there I was getting edibles from my friend Debbie, um, at a steal. They're $5 for these Swedish fish, but
Nice.
they weren't working. And I tried, like, so I met Debbie in the corner, and so she said, "How are those working out?" And I said, "Well, if I'm being honest, they don't work." And she goes, "Oh." And so digs in her purse and says, "Here, take this." And it was a big gummy bear, a big one.
Yeah.
Um, so I just figured I was getting more of the same, and I try to placate it and
Right.
not make her feel bad. And so I ate a sizable chunk, and she's like, "No, have some more." So okay, and then she says, "Well, that's from a different dispensary," and I'm like, "Oh shit!" And she's like, "Oh, I wouldn't do that to you," and so it put my mind at ease. And later on, about a half an hour later, I didn't know that um, the drummer's girlfriend had some of that too. And she stands up at the table we're sitting at, and she says, "I'm losing my fucking mind." And I'm like, "Oh shit!" I'm about a half an hour behind her, and I'm a 5 to 10 mil, like 10 mil max guy.
Yeah.
If for all you THC users out there, um, and I probably ingested 50 to 60
Oh
mil.
shit.
And it was like an acid trip, and it kept me up all night. And I wrote a song about it, and it's a hilarious song in the like a 50s kind of vibe, like a Chuck Berry kind of
Yeah.
Beach Boys kind of thing.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, and then I wrote a song, "You Are So Wonder," about my wife, um, and just my puppy dog eyes about my ex-wife, and just so there are autobiographical songs
Cool.
all over this album, and I'm
Excellent.
very proud of it. This is I put my producer's hat on for the first time, and I think I co-produced it with a good friend of mine, Carl Condrat, who lives in Hazel Park, and it was just a basement. He's
Yeah.
got a studio in his basement, but he's got all this great gear, and we just we sat on it and sat on it and made it perfect to our ears. So
Right.
I'm hoping that translates to everyone else.
Awesome. Fantastic. So, you're going to try to tie this in with the book. So it's really, as soon as the book is coming out, then the album's going to come out. Is
If I
the
have my
goal?
way,
Okay.
yeah. Well, if I have my way, I never know what the publisher is going to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are too many question marks right now. But if let's just say if I have my way about it,
Yep.
I'll release the book, and then 3 4 months later, I'll have a release party
Yeah.
somewhere local.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
So Tony, I'm curious about like what musicians or bands had the most influence on you as far as the music of Dude? Because I know Muggs is slightly different. It's not well, it's a little different. But for Dude, what are your influences behind that music?
You know, Mostly it's psychedelic pop rock from the late 60s, and just good old fashioned rock from the early 70s. So um are you familiar with the Pretty Things?
Yep.
SF Sorrow is like an important album to me. I love Big Star.
Yeah.
The Beatles, everyone says the Beatles, but
Right.
it's the gift that keeps on giving. I've been getting into Rubber Soul lately,
Yeah.
and I've done this my whole entire life. I put them, um, you know, I don't listen to them for a couple of years, and then it's like listening to them for the first time.
Oh yeah.
I love Badfinger. I love Todd Rundgren.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Todd.
A Wizard, a True Star is just one of the best albums I've heard in a long time. Um, you know, I just I'm friends with Dave Lawson from the Scrappers, and he just hit me to this band called the Tages from the late '60s.
Oh,
Never heard of them before in my life.
me either.
Just on Monday, and I'm obsessed with that album right now. It's a psychedelic late
Yeah.
'60s.
Awesome.
So yeah, that's and everything in between. I love writing ballads. Beach Boys are so important to me. Um, and as a matter of fact, the last song on the on Autobiographitti is called "Tomorrow's Promise to No One," and it's probably the saddest song I've ever written. It's about my mom who died suddenly
Oh,
of a heart attack in 2015. About 6 days before we had our release party for the Mugs,
oh,
Straight Up
geez.
Boogaloo. Yeah, it was tough. It was a gut punch, and I still miss her dearly. And so I had the song that I was, you know, I recorded in 1996, and it was just an instrumental. I didn't quite know what to do with it or where to put melody or lyrics or anything.
Mm-hmm.
But this was December after she had passed away, and I just was listening to it because I'm always reviewing old tapes and what can I do with older songs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it just came to me out of nowhere, like I was struck by lightning, and the lyrics and the melody just came to me, and I decided it's a short song, but it's in the vein of the Beach Boys, very poignant, and it's a very personal song to me, and I miss my mom every day. I'm a mama's
Yeah.
boy.
Oh yeah. I understand, man. That I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, it's okay. It's life, and she would never want me to be down in the dumps for too long.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Beach Boys, and I love old doo-wop. My favorite ballad of all time is "I Only Have Eyes for You" by the Flamingos.
Oh yeah.
Um, just the '50s rock. There's just there's a lot. I'm sure if you ask anyone that question, there's so many layers to it.
Oh yeah.
But I tend to gravitate towards '50s, '60s, '70s. Not to say that the '80s and beyond aren't relevant. And I always trip across, some band, that I love right now.
Yeah.
Like Ty Segall is a great example of who, the rock band I want to be, when I'm not trying to, because he's just exciting, and he writes great lyrics, great
Yeah.
melodies. So,
Oh yeah.
yeah, so I'm kind of like all over the map. I love writing country western. There's a cup, there's one country western on Kid Gloves, my first album, and then there's another one coming out called Devils in My Whiskey. Once again, that's a
Awesome.
true story too. Just I was, and I felt like a friend had done me wrong, and
Yeah.
the Mugs were playing in Toledo. I forget when I wrote it, maybe 2014. And I didn't have anything to eat that day, and I was 3 whiskeys and 4 beers in, and I just started motherfucking my friend who had wronged me. And so I wrote a song called "Devils in My Whiskey." And with Dude, it's all guitar harmonies and harmonies, and
Yeah.
the melody for me is the most important thing. So for all you songwriters out there, if the melody is good, you can build the instrumentation around a good melody.
Yeah. So I'm curious about like how you do your like compositions. Like what is the main tool that you use as far as like
Well,
getting
I
that
use a
down?
Fender Rhodes piano, and I'm a bass player. I've always been a bass guitar player in my mind. Ever since Danny Muggs asked me to start playing bass guitar, I shifted my perspective from listening to guitar lines to bass lines, zeroing in on how to craft a good bass line.
Yeah.
So when I sit down to write a song, sometimes, because of my limitation, because I'm paralyzed on my right side, and my hand and arm are, my hand is 100% paralyzed. Just to clarify, there's so many different kinds of strokes and paralysis.
Yep.
I have 100% sensation, so I can feel everything. So when I say paralyzed, it doesn't mean that it's numb. It
Yeah.
just, I lack motor skill,
Right.
and that's just, every stroke is different. As I'll pound this into your brains when you read my book. But so it's allowed me, because I never, I'm always looking forward, never backwards. I'm not one of those poor sons of bitches that say I could have been.
Hmm.
So there are no limitations. So sometimes I'll just have a melody in my head, and I'll bring it to the Fender Rhodes piano, and I'll find what key it is in, and if I can sing it, I'll, and it's just out of luck, if sheer luck, if the melody in my head matches what I can sing on the piano, I'll pursue that song. Sometimes I have to modulate it, and
Yep.
all that means is, you know what that means, right?
Yeah.
You
Yep.
just have to shift the key around to find out what what range you vocally
Yeah.
you
You can
can
get
sing
on
it
the
in.
instrument. Yep.
I was just telling a friend the other day. I was in the I was doing grocery shopping at Kroger's, and I always have a melody in my head, or just sometimes it just comes to me, especially when I'm high. And I just love how THC turns on my brain,
Yeah.
and I use it as a tool, not for nefarious reasons. I just it's the fun drugs,
Yeah, the creative aspect of it.
Yeah, and so I was uh, I was walking to my car, and this melody just popped in my head, and so the iPhone and the voice memo, and I just
Oh,
recorded it, and then I found it on the piano and modulated it a couple times, and we're gonna start working on it. So hopefully by the summer, you'll hear this song.
awesome.
It's a spiteful song, but you know, it's probably the most spiteful one I've ever written. It's called "You Don't Have Anyone," and
Awesome.
I'm not sure who I wrote it about. I'll say I'll cop to it's fiction right now, but
Yeah.
maybe when I figure out, sometimes I just figure out my it's therapy,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
but so sometimes I imagine the song, and or sometimes you just are inspired after a local show. There
Hmm.
are so many great local bands,
Oh, for
and
sure.
honestly, I use them to my advantage. I never, I just what like there's this sense of inspiration that I get
Yep.
when I see a band I love. Visions, for example, Limestone Cowboys,
Oh,
Dear
yeah.
Darkness. Down the rabbit hole we can go locally.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Hell yeah.
I put kind of put myself on the spot, but there are so many bands.
Yep.
Sliz is another one, another one of my favorites, or Eck, Johnny Hench. Anyways, so I'll come home in a semi-drunken state, and I'll just down at the piano and go for something, like just try to put a sentence together, or a melody,
Right.
and just say whatever comes to mind.
Are you constantly recording things as you're doing this so that you keep them? I mean, because that seems like
Yes.
that would be a problem. But like you'd come up with some great idea and then go to sleep and then like, fuck, what was that?
Yeah, I have to record it, because I don't know what it is about me. Like, if I don't, I've done this before. It bites me in the ass. If I don't record it, then sometimes in the morning it's lost. It's just
Yeah.
lost in the wind. Especially when I'm trying to, sometimes I'll write a song, and then I'll come up with a groovy bass line for that song. And if I don't record it right then and there, then the cadence is lost. And
Yeah.
um, so it is exactly that. You're absolutely correct. And sometimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night. I actually dream of melodies, and I'll just onomatopoeia it into my phone, and then just go back to sleep.
Awesome.
So I am really, as cliche as it sounds, I'm trying to be true to being an artist, being a musician, and being a songwriter.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So Tony, one thing I like to do is kind of get people to think about like the if I had a dream kind of thing. So a musical pilgrimage. If you could go on any stage around the world that you haven't already played with any other band, being on that bill with you, where would you go and who would you like to have on that bill?
Hmm, that's a good question. Um, I've never been to any of the festivals like Burning Man.
Oh yeah,
I think dude would it would be
it would
great,
be good
because
there.
Burning Man is like a bunch of freaks and
Right.
popping acid, and just let your freak flag
Right.
fly.
Right.
Um, I think Burning Man, that would be a hoot,
That would, yeah.
And I mentioned Ty Segall. I don't know if he would want to play with me, but I've always been interested in contemporary bands like Ty Segall or Corey Hansen, from Wand. He's amazing. His band Wand is amazing, but he came out with some singer songwriter albums. It just says Corey Hansen,
Uh-huh.
and they're very psychedelic, very steeped in the late '60s. The Unborn Capitalist from Limbo is the album that I'm just crazy about.
I'm gonna
And
check it out because I've not heard it. So I gotta.
yeah, Corey Hansen, the unborn capitalist from Limbo.
Awesome.
I was just listening to it today, as a matter of fact. Um, and it's just amazing. It's not rock and roll,
Yeah.
but if you like introspective, artsy, thoughtful, songs, there's nothing better.
Awesome.
Yeah, so bands like that. If I could go back in time, I'd just like to be a fly on the wall, for the Beatles or
Yeah.
any of those. The Who, I would love to play with the Who or any of those bands.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
really inspired me.
Yeah. Is there any place you'd like to play in the world that you haven't already?
Ooh, I'd love for the Mugs and for Dude to get down to South America.
Yeah.
Argentina. They have a really good rock and roll. You know, uh, they just love the rock and roll, and we've talked about it before. I book, the Mugs, and I get us, you know, sprinkle the Mugs in, corners of the world, and there's talk about it,
That would
through a
be
couple
super cool,
promoters.
actually. Yeah.
Yeah, but there's always
Logistics of getting
trust.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's always the trust factor, and
Yeah.
in 2018, I was talking to this French promoter, about getting us to, Spain and France and Germany, and he turned out to be a real creep.
Oh, bummer.
And I didn't know it, because he's been out there for 10 years, and I've seen his name thrown around, in chat rooms and, Facebook, and so I figured he was a legit guy, and
Yeah.
but I didn't vet him the way I should have. And so what happened was, this Spanish promoter said I won't work with him. He just seems like a bad guy, a bad
Yeah.
actor. So we actually, didn't go with this guy from, this promoter from France, and we ended up going with the promoter that kind of, sniffed the spread out, and we toured, the whole country of Spain, in 2018.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that was the last time we've been there. The Mugs were supposed to tour in 2020, November 2020, but we all know what happened.
Yeah. Everything got put on hold and for
Yeah,
however long.
yeah.
Yeah. So, so if you could have a beverage of your choice, a beer, whatever, with someone you admire, who would that be, and why would you want to hang out with them and talk to them?
Hmm. Hmm. Living or
It could
deceased,
be
or
living or dead. Yep.
yeah. Well, I would really like a conversation, with John Lennon.
Oh,
Um, and I just, I'm a simple guy. Just give me a Miller Lite and a shot. It used to be shots of, whiskey, Jameson. Now, I broke up with, whiskey during the pandemic, and now, I like my tequila.
all right.
So yeah, I have I have dreams about him every year, and just like last week, I had a dream about hanging out with John Lennon, and then who comes knocking on the door but Paul McCartney, and so I was hanging out with Paul and John, and we were buddies,
Awesome.
and I just have so many questions for him, because like as a young man, he really inspired me,
Yeah.
to
Did you
write.
watch the movie Let It Be?
I did, and man, I have more respect for Paul McCartney than ever than, before, because I realized that if not for Paul, John was on heroin with, Yoko, and George had one foot out the door. He was just so pissed off, and I get it.
Yep. Yeah.
You know, by contract, that he was only allowed two songs um, per album, and honestly, if like imagine if you and I were together for the next 10 years, and we are just tethered, the jokes get stale. I
Yeah.
can't believe that they survived as long as they did with that fame, and with the cameras always on them,
Yeah.
they just wanted to like George wanted to say "fuck you, Paul," but cameras are rolling, so
Right.
he's got to take the high road and say, oh, "I'm out of here."
Yeah.
Um, and it's just it just Paul kept that band together ever since Brian Epstein, their manager, died, and so I always view it as if not for Paul, we wouldn't have a Magical Mystery Tour, White Album, Abbey Road, and Let It
Yeah.
Be, and all the singles that went with that. So, and you can see it, it's subjective, but, I could see that during the filming of Get Back, how integral Paul was to, he handled the business,
Yeah.
and he was writing the best songs. He was just, I don't throw this word around too often, but genius. I give the genius tag to Stevie Wonder, Brian Wilson, and Paul McCartney, maybe Frank Zappa, and maybe Dylan, and that's about all I can see.
Yeah.
But man, he just revolutionized the bass. He was a guitar player, and no one else wanted to play the bass. And okay,
I'll
I'll
do it.
revolutionize this instrument. Why not?
Right.
So yeah, it was eye opening, and
It was
it was
eye-opening. Yeah.
yeah,
It was
really
it
good.
was it was great because it reminded me of I mean, I'm definitely not anywhere near the caliber of musician, but just being in a band and doing that process of like trying to get people organized and or like let's come up with some ideas and then like putting that together, and you could see all that going on, right? You could see
Yeah,
Paul trying to get everybody like on the same page and like let's actually work on something, and yeah, it was super cool. I think my wife was a little bit like, what in the hell is going on here, but I loved the concert at the end, and yeah, it was fantastic. I could watch
and
that over again.
the naive 20-something, when I saw the concert for the first time, um, I didn't realize that they took multiple takes.
Oh yeah.
And, and of course they would, but when it's just so naive of me back then to think that they just nailed it the first time, and and all the takes were good, but
Yeah.
there is a pecking order of what's really good and what's good,
Yeah.
and yeah, so it was just fascinating from that perspective.
Yeah, and I liked how
It,
they called out like which songs made it like onto the albums, right? So you'd say,
mhm.
"Oh, that cut is they kept," right? So that was kind of
Yeah,
cool. So then when
yeah,
you listen to it again, it gives you that another perspective, You get a little bit.
yep. Which is what I'm kind of going, like, that's my angle for Autobiograffitti, releasing the book first, because maybe you'll gain some insight to who I am, and to my passion um, as a songwriter, and just all the stories and the experiences that I've had, and maybe you can glean some kind of insight
Yeah.
and when you listen to the album.
Yeah. So another kind of origin story question I like to ask is, what was the first album you bought?
Oh, well, the first album I bought was probably H2O by Hall and Oates.
Awesome.
Oh, I love that album. Oh, it's Hall and Oates are great. I
Yeah.
just love melody.
Yeah.
I don't take, I'm not so cool that I can't appreciate a good melody.
Oh hell yeah.
Um, uh, a friend of mine, she actually has done some artwork for me. Her name is CJ Carpenter. Um, she's a great graphic artist, and she's got all these companies going, just throwing herself at it like me. And she actually designed the autobiography, the book cover,
Oh cool.
which is a collage. She knocked it out of the park. And we were talking about Huey Lewis and the News. I think the album was called Sports, and you know, it's not going to save the world, but there are catchy melodies on there.
Oh hell yeah.
And does everything have to be taken so seriously and taken so artistically? Of course, there's the Beatles and all that, but sometimes, just a fun song,
Yeah, exactly.
is all it needs to be,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Was there a particular song or that drew you to that Hall Notes album?
Well, I talk about this in my book. I was a follower, and there was, thankfully, there was good music on the radio back then.
Yeah.
And so growing up, I just listened to whatever my parents listened to, which my dad was like a lot of Beatles, um, the Flamingos, for instance, a lot of doo-wop,
Yeah.
and Elton John, Paul Simon, and on my my mom's side, it was Barry Manilow and Neil Diamond, and
Nice.
so somewhat of the more cheesy artists, subjective, but I could cop to that, right?
Yeah.
So growing up, I just listened to whatever I was handed, and I never really sought anything more than what was in front of my face,
Right.
So it wasn't until in high school that I met Danny Muggs, and he and my other best friend Andy Mizraco, who's the rhythm guitar player in my Ween tribute band
Hmm.
called Megaweech. Those two guys really hit me and opened up my eyes to, um, the Dead Kennedys and Led Zeppelin. I really hadn't heard, like, I'd heard of Led Zeppelin, but I really hadn't listened to it unless it was on an infomercial in the early '80s.
Yeah.
Watching TV as a kid.
Right.
So and down the rabbit hole we go with the bands that really affected me. I didn't even like the Who until I was like 19.
Uh,
I just didn't get Roger Daltrey's voice, and but boy was I wrong. I'll admit when I'm wrong, and
yeah.
man, I was 100% wrong on that one.
Well,
And then
go
was it
ahead.
okay? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think sometimes you have to mature into the music or your ear has to get there, right? It doesn't necessarily resonate with 18-year-old you, but 25-year-old you is like, oh shit, I was missing out on this. Because that happened to me. Like I did not like the Beatles at all when I was in high school. I was all
Mhm.
about heavy metal and that's all I listened to. And I, listened to Hendrix, but that was it. And then, it wasn't until I was probably 30 before I really listened to the White Album. And I was like, holy shit, I've
Yeah,
been listening to this for years.
yeah. And that's what I love about music right now, especially apps like Spotify.
Oh yeah.
I got the without the commercials. I bought that package, and
Yeah.
the algorithms are elegant. And I've in the last 4 years since I've had it, I've been inspired, and they throw shit at me that I never heard. Now they're my favorite bands, and so sometimes technology is good.
Yeah.
Most of the time, no. But yeah, it just and that's the good thing about it, because there's so many bands that will never get their due. It's just
Yeah.
impossible. But you put it on Spotify, and sometimes you find it,
Yeah.
and your life is enhanced.
Yeah.
And this is an unforgiving business. I don't expect to get rich. I do this for selfish reasons because I'm an artist. I love it, and I'm always going to write a song. Keeps me sharp,
Yeah.
and the Detroit music community is just excellent. I'll always, even if I wasn't a musician, I would be there. Danny Muggs and I, like, before, when we sucked. I mean, we were just learning how to play our instruments, and we sucked. We were always going out and seeing bands, and sizing up our competition. We knew we sucked, but we knew we had something about us that we couldn't be denied.
Yeah.
And, like, it's just to say, I feel like the little train that could. I wasn't naturally blessed like Danny Muggs. After 6 months of playing guitar, he was figuring out how to solo in the blues after
Oh.
6 months, like, almost a prodigy.
Yeah.
And then everything he did with the Mugs, the songwriting, and I just chipped away at it, and I got better incrementally. And you use your imagination and your ear, and you just sometimes it makes sense to you, not right off the rip, but
Right. Right.
sometimes things come together, and that's how I feel right now. I'm always been a late bloomer, and I think right now my songwriting is the best it's ever been in my career. So I'm
Awesome.
really excited about the next year. And shoot, I've already written my third album for Dude, and I'm working on fourth album material. So
Holy crap.
I'm just inspired these days.
That's awesome, man. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. So are you so what are the plans for I mean, I know you got the Autobiograffitti coming out at some point, but like this summer, where's Dude gonna be playing? What are you guys gonna be doing?
We're playing some festivals. We're booked at Witches at Brewery again.
Oh, awesome, cool.
Yeah, Dude and the Mugs.
Oh, nice.
And Kaja Cafe, they have a annual Muscle Beach party.
Yeah,
Dude is gonna be doing that. Um,
excellent.
and we're just, right now the goal is until I get this, release party figured out,
Right,
and because I'm tethered, this is this project is the book and the album.
right.
It's kind of like I could have released the album 2 years ago, but really feel like this has been 5 years of my life, with the book and with the album, and they almost coincide perfectly. I started recording the album in January 2017, right after Dude got off a tour in Spain.
Uh-huh.
And just knowing how the Mugs taught me, when you're always touring, go in the studio right after when you get home, because you're red hot, you can read each other's minds.
Yeah.
And so it's really a question mark right now, but I'm getting things done. I'm meeting with the woman I spoke of so highly, CJ Carpenter. She's going to help me format the book in a
Yep.
PDF format for so I can shop it around to publishers.
Cool.
And once when once I have once that is in motion, I can know where the album's going to go,
Yeah.
and how to plan. It could be this fall I can release the album, or it could be next spring. But I've waited this long, and I really I really feel strongly about waiting and releasing it and getting the best bang for my buck,
Yeah.
because you only get one shot at releasing an autobiography,
Right.
and so it'll be worth the wait. Let's just say to all 19 Dude fans out there, it'll be worth the wait.
Awesome, man. um, so another origin question I was thinking of that I really wanted to ask you is, what was the first concert you ever went to?
You know,
Was it Hall
actually,
Notes?
no, it's Paul Simon. And
Really?
I was actually late to that as well. The late bloomer that I was 19 years old, and my girlfriend at the time, her name was Jody. She bought me tickets to see Paul Simon, and she was so sweet. She said, "And you can take Danny if you want, because I've been best friends with Danny
Right.
since we were 13." And I'm like, "No, I want to go with you." And that was the first official concert that I was
Awesome.
at. Other than that, there was this place. I want to say it was either Van Dyke or Mound, 13 a Mound, or somewhere around there. My mom used to take me and my brothers when we were young. It's called the Pied Piper's Pizza Peddler, and it was all polka style music, and it was
Awesome.
European style, seating. So if you've ever been to the Kaja Cafe,
Yep.
they have tables that and so it was just picnic tables, and we would have pizza, and this guy would come up from the ground and with his organ, and he would play polka style, roll out the barrel
Right.
and shit like that. And it,
That's
you
awesome.
know, my family was never musical insofar as we never had instruments laying around, but
Like,
I was always, steeped in music. You know, my family was always listening to music.
that's
So
awesome.
yeah,
Fantastic, man.
Yeah.
As far as like when you were talking about your first concert, I was wondering like, what was the very first time that you played on stage, and do you remember what that was like and where you were at?
Yeah. This is funny. I used to work for this woman. Her name was Christine, and we were just Danny and I were just starting in a band, and we decided to call the band Fat Ballet Brown. Um, and I'll get to that in a minute. Um, and she, we were looking to play out, like, because we played in the basement forever,
Yep.
for like almost a year, and we wanted to challenge ourselves. We were playing in the basement and the Hootenanny at Kaji Cafe, those two places. And the basement was Danny's basement. And his stepdad called the basement Sweet Treats. And it was an oasis of fun. They had a house kit down there, and just so we'd bring over our amps and guitars, and we would just hash it out
Yeah.
and have a great time. And so it got so serious that okay, we want to play. So Christine, I worked for Christine. She cleaned, high-end Grosse Pointe homes and businesses, and she also, the hustler that she was managing a Buscemi's pizzeria on Woodward, and she always joked around. She's like, "I'm going to give you your first break," as if we were going to be somebody, right?
Right.
So we played for the first time at Buscemi's,
Oh,
and all of
awesome.
our family and friends came out. And it was terrifying, but and I'm sure it was awful to some extent. But you have to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, hell
And
yeah. How old were
everyone,
you?
I was 21.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I started playing acoustic guitar at 18 and 19. Danny and I started together, and
Uh-huh.
then my dad bought me an electric guitar. And then around 20 years old, Danny asked me if I would consider playing the bass guitar. And honestly, he must have been prescient, because, if not me switching to the bass guitar, I don't know where I'd be as a musician right now, because if you know the piano, the bass clef of the piano is on the left-hand side.
Yeah.
And this is the only hand that works,
Right.
ladies. So yeah, it's just one of those things where he must have been prescient, because it just worked out that way. I
Right.
didn't have to, make too many, modifications. I just could
Right.
naturally be on the left side. And, music notes have always been sesame. So, but yeah,
Cool.
yeah, good times, great oldies.
Awesome, man. So, Tony, thanks so much for being on Fans with Bands. I've got just one last question for you, and
Okay.
that is, it's controversial. Um, Pineapple or no pineapple on pizzas?
Oh, pineapple all the way.
Oh yeah, all
Oh,
right.
yeah.
What's your favorite combo as far as
That
toppings?
would be pineapple, ham, and mushrooms.
Really excellent,
And ham.
nice.
Yeah.
All right, awesome, man. Well, Tony,
All right,
thanks
man.
again. Yeah.
Hey, thank you, Chuck. We've been good friends for quite a while, and thank you for having me on your show.
Oh hell yeah, man! And I can't wait to well, one, I'm dying to read the book, and I can't wait for the new music, and I'll definitely be seeing Dude and or the Mugs, sometime this year. So that'll be awesome.
All right, sounds good, man.
All right, brother.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks to Tony for joining me on this episode of Fans with Bands. I can't wait to hear their new record called Autobiograffitti, which should be coming out soon. Tony also has an accompanying book of the same title, which sounds fantastic. Keep your eyes peeled for all the Dude happenings over on their Facebook page. And you can go listen to some tunes now over on Spotify or Bandcamp. See the show notes for all the details and links. These are tough times for everyone in the creative industries such as music. Your support of live streaming, purchasing music, and merchandise is critical. If you can help out your local artists, please do. If you are in the Michigan area, consider following the Playing in the Detroit Area Tonight Facebook page. It is a place for fans and bands to support each other and share our combined love of music. Thank you all so much for listening. Be sure to hit subscribe on your favorite podcast service to get each and every episode of Fans with Bands. Spread the word by rating the show and leaving a comment. We want to hear what you think. You can keep in touch by following us on social media. This is a Life in Michigan production. Until next time, be well and kick out the jam.